미래사회, 인류에게 가장 중요한 것을 말하는 시간, 미래예측 박영숙 교수입니다. 불교와 미래, 생소하다고 느끼시는 분들이 많으시겠죠? 우리들 인생의 큰 그림을 그려주는 것이 바로 종교인데요. 그러기 위해서는 먼 미래까지를 걱정해야 합니다. 수많은 불자들에게 다양한 조언을 해주시는 이런 상황에서 종교 지도자들에게 미래 변화를 제대로 아는 것은 정말 중요합니다. 미래 예측이라는 미래 강연이 한국 사회를 바꾸고 새로운 시각으로 미래를 대비할 수 있는 데 도움을 주는 그 첫 시간, 오늘 특별한 손님을 모셨습니다. 유엔미래포럼의 회장이신 제롬 글렌 박사님을 모셨습니다. 같이 함께 하겠습니다. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jerome Glenn. I'm a general futurist. I've been doing futures research for about 40 years, and I'm here in Korea to give some talks at conferences.
What is the Millennium Project?
The Millennium Project is a global think tank. It has created a way for people around the world to think together about the future and to get feedback from other people about that so that you slowly develop a sense of wisdom about the future. And we produce a State of the Future report, a methodology series, a collective intelligence system, and we're trying to help humanity think together as a whole, not on just a technology or an issue or an ideology, but how humanity itself as a whole system improves and thinks together.
What is the history of Millennium Project?
Well, it began with a feasibility study in 1992 under the United Nations University. And it lasted for a 3-year feasibility study. So we began in operations in 1996 under the American Council for the UN University and worked several years until we eventually became independent about 5 or 6 years ago. The idea was to create some kind of a permanent system as a gift from our millennium in the past to the next millennium in the future. And we're still working on making that real.
How many people started that?
Well, it began essentially with Ted Gordon and myself. We're two different futurists, different orientations and so forth, but we came together to create it, and then we involved other futurists very quickly around the world.
What are the main sort of subjects? What are the challenges that you are studying or you are doing researches?
Well, we asked people in the very beginning, what's going on in the world that's either going to become a very big deal in 25 years, or people are misunderstood or they don't know about it. So we collected all kinds of ideas. We went through a long, complex process. We ended up eventually with 15 global challenges. Challenge 1 is on sustainable development and climate change. 2 is on water. 3 is on demography and resources. 4 is on democratization. 5 is on decision making. 6 is on information technology, working for everybody. 7, and it goes all the way up to 15 of global ethics. But we look at organized crime, we look at war and peace, we look at gender issues. In the same sense that in medicine we look at the human body of having different systems. You've got a respiratory system, a skeletal system, endocrine system. All these systems work together. So the 15 global challenges is a framework to think about the human body, the whole human family, together, and what the agenda is that we as a family, humans, have to address all together. So challenge 1 is not more important or less important than challenge 15. Just like the circulatory system is not more or less important than the nervous system. The most important issue is for us not to say what the most important issue is. This is the trouble, is we say, well, energy is more important than water. And the water people say, no, water is more important than energy. And then you have an argument and nothing gets done. Those people that think water is more important, let them work on water. They all have to be done. That's like asking a doctor which part of your body circulatory system is more important. You can't do it.
why do we have to learn or do some sort of research on 15 challenges in order not to collapse altogether?
Right.
What are the purposes?
Because you can't just, it's like the human body. You can't just pay attention to the nervous system. You can't just pay attention to the skeletal system. It all has to work together. All 15 have to be done. So, and so nobody has to work on all of them. But we as a think tank present a platform, a menu for humanity to pick the parts they want. But then we help organize that so that we're improving our thinking about all of them together. So if you improve one of the challenges, it helps the others. If you have problems in the other ones, it makes problems to the others. So we as a human species have to treat them all. But as an individual person, we can pick out the ones we think are more important. But we can learn from the relationship of the other ones as well.
So it also has to be global.
Has to be global.
So do you think you have achieved quite a lot with this Millennium Project so far? What are your achievements?
One is in the very beginning, many futurists, almost all of them, said you can't do global futures research. It's too complex. You know, pick a subject, pick a focus, just do one thing at a time. You can't look at the whole picture. It's too much. Almost no futurist says that now. They might say you're not doing it perfectly. But they might say you're not, this is too much or that's too much. But the idea of doing global futures research, history will look back and see the Millennium Project established that. That's one. Secondly, environmental security did not have a real resonance, a real definition in countries around the world. We got involved in creating that concept, doing monthly reports, environmental scanning reports for the militaries all around the world. The U.S. paid for it, but it went to all the other militaries. Now, all militaries of any major ability has an environmental security program, policies, strategies. We even did some stuff with the UN. They have what they call a status of forces agreements. They never had environment in there until we came along. So the whole idea of seeing the environmental security relationship is one of the main things that we've contributed, I would say, as well.
Very good. Recently we had the AlphaGo playing Go with the Isedol Korean. And after that, the AI boom or awareness of AI came to Korea. And we are also worried about, losing a lot of jobs by AI. You are doing some sort of Work 2050 report.
That's right.
Why is it important?
Well, we asked the chairs of the Millennium Project around the world, what do you think ought to be studied? And they decided that it was the future of work and technology. So we did a literature search to find out what questions haven't been answered well. And then we put together a questionnaire to answer those. The results of that are going into some scenarios that we're working on now, and we hope to give those back to every country, Korea included, and then it would lead to workshops. Why is this important? Because when people are talking about the artificial intelligence that beat the Go champion, or that beat the chess champion, or that beat the Jeopardy champion, that was focused intelligence. It was narrow intelligence. It wasn't general intelligence like your brain that learns from feedback and rewrites its own code. When artificial intelligence moves to general intelligence, when it rewrites its own code, based upon feedback from Internet of Things worldwide, it will learn so much faster than people will be surprised by this. This may be 2030 or so, 2035, we're not sure. But the point is, you may have one of these kind of curves like this on unemployment. Because right now you can say that some jobs are getting replaced by jobs. That's true. And yes, it's also creating jobs. That's true. And so far, so okay. There's a little bit of problems with concentration of wealth, development gap, all these sort of things are still a problem. But the real problem comes up when all of a sudden, all of these learnings with artificial intelligence goes so much faster and so much cheaper than human beings that we don't want to have that wall crash. We want to think ahead of time and say, okay, that's a problem, potential problem. We have time to think about it. Do we encourage self-employment? Do we have guaranteed income? How do we work with this? Do we merge with the technology in some way that we're not competing with it, but we're together with it? Like you don't compete with your glasses, you just use your glasses, right?
That's right.
So there's a lot to be thought through, and we as a human species have to think it through together. Nobody knows enough. The AI people don't know enough about culture. The culture people don't necessarily know about AI, etc. We have to have this conversation together because culture will change, just as agricultural culture changed into the industrial culture. We'll have a bigger change coming up with this one.
So with the AI, things will be changed
Yes.
within 10, 15 years, and we should be prepared. And the Korean sort of Ministry of Labor
Yes.
or Kribet may be interested in your project.
They should be interested because labor isn't just the present tense. You also have an education system leading to future labor and so forth. But if labor, where you go to work for somebody else in a job, that model is going to be shrinking. All right? Now, I don't think it's not going to disappear in 10 years. But it's going to be shrink a bit in 10 years. We're already seeing the possibilities of driverless cars being on the road in 5 or 10 years, right? So that's going to affect truck drivers. A lot of jobs will still be there. So it's not that they're going to go away fast, but enough of the jobs that we normally think of today in 2020, 2030, especially 2035, are going to start to disappear. So we have time to prepare for that. We have an opportunity to create what we're calling a self-actualization economy. Right now, we have people employed to run civilization, make sure the food is there, the shelter is there, the shipping is there. We've got a system now that more or less works, not for everybody, but it works for an awful lot of the world. Now, that system isn't quite complete yet, but we're in the process of completing it quickly. When automation and artificial intelligence is able then to run that system without our human labor, then we are freed up to actualize ourselves. Who am I? How should I be in life? What's the meaning of life? This is where Buddhism comes in very important here. What's the consciousness of we should aspire to? Then how do we manifest that consciousness in a livelihood? We can find markets for ourselves worldwide. Right now, you go to a place to have a job that's near your house, or hopefully near your house. But in the future, you'll be able to find markets worldwide for the uniqueness that's you. So that each person can start to self-actualize, evolve their consciousness, manifest it by hitting markets outside. So the purpose of work can be evolving your own being rather than just making a living. Because you may be able to make a living from a guaranteed income in the future. Because if we have enough of this growth, enough of this wealth, then that wealth can be taxed and then shared with the public.
Sure. So Buddhism can also come in to deal with Work 2050.
Yes.
And also it will be very important for this, basic income, guaranteed income sort of system where Buddhism can come in.
Now, we still have a lot of homework to do on how to make the guaranteed income work. It's not going to work at this moment right now because the cost of living is still high. But as the cost of living, everybody knows that technology, the price starts to keep coming down.
Yeah.
But that's happening in a lot of areas.
That is called abundance.
Yes, we're moving toward abundance, that's right. And the cost of abundance is starting to go down. So this means that eventually we may be able to afford a guaranteed income. Right now, it's not quite there yet. But then when those jobs start to disappear, that's when the cost effect might actually work. So we might be able to make it.
So how many countries are there practicing this basic income system?
Finland will be putting in a basic income. There's a bunch of countries that have done experiments, but I'll just hit a couple of them. One, Finland is taking its welfare program and retirement program and all that other social welfare programs, consolidating that into one payment. Now that payment, unfortunately, at the moment, is half the poverty wage. But what that also means, though, if somebody does get unemployed, they have a period of time of having some income so that they can start to develop their own self, their own work, and their own wealth. So it's a safety transition there. Switzerland has a vote coming up, I think, this summer on having it for the country as well. There have been small pockets of these experiments, several in Africa, by the way. And one of the key findings is that the people used to say, well, if you gave people some sort of basic income,
they get
they'll
lazy.
be lazy. And they'll drink and they become drug addicts and all of that.
That's right.
That's not what the research shows so far.
Yes.
If people actually do the homework, anybody can do Google searches.
Yeah, I read something on Brazil.
Yes, and Brazil was one that had an
Area
area
of
too.
Brazil,
And
yes.
it turns out that the health improves a little bit, the education improves a little bit, and some people actually use the money to invest a little bit into their own economic activities. So it's a net gain for the economy to do this.
People were shocked by ability of AlphaGo AI, and that shocked the world, but especially Korean, because it happened here in Korea.
Congratulations.
So people are more aware of the new emerging technologies. What are the new emerging technologies? How do you know, how many?
Well, first, what I would like, I'll say a bunch of them, but what I'd like your audience to remember is think of them as being a synergy, right? Like your telephone is a synergy of a calendar, an alarm clock, a flashlight, a video camera, as well as a phone. It's a whole bunch of things, right? So I will say a bunch of things, but think in the future these things get together.
That's right. Yeah.
One is synthetic biology. This is where we take different
Do you
parts.
think that is the biggest one?
That's one of the biggest.
One of
They're
the
all
big.
big.
All big.
They're
Okay.
all big. I mean, the globe, even the cloud analytics is big because that means everybody gets smarter together. That's a big deal.
Cloud?
Cloud analytics. This is where you have
cloud
all this
analytics.
stuff. So if you want to understand what's the relationship of A to B, you can answer that through global information systems and very fast. That ability to learn will be extraordinary. Artificial intelligence obviously is a big one, but there's three parts to artificial intelligence. First, the focused, like with the Go.
Yeah.
Second is the general, like your brain.
There is
Then-
artificial,
It's
general
artifi-
intelligence, and super intelligence.
And super intelligence when it gets more intelligent than we are, and it becomes like an independent species. Now, hopefully, we evolve with it together, so it's not independent of us, but it's part of us, just like your glasses are part of you.
Yes, you're saying that we shouldn't be afraid of.
If we merge together and grow together, it's okay. But if it's off to the side and it starts to develop its own direction and its own goals, and then we have no idea what it'll do. We've never seen this before.
Yeah.
So anyway, artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, 3D printing and 4D printing, bioprinting, nanotechnology, cognitive science. We may be augmented geniuses in the not too distant future. We just did a little survey on some of these questions, and it was somewhere like around more than 50% of the people thought that by 2030, 35, we might have augmented genius capability, just like we have augment with our eyeglasses. We may be able to augment ourselves and become a much more intelligent species. I hope that happens, because then we can evolve together with the AI rather than apart from it.
Nanobio, infocogno, all that, plus synthetic biology and AI robotics, along with the 3D printing and drones and self-driving cars.
Now imagine all of those things starting to integrate, and that's us integrating with that. That's a very likely future. More likely than people realize.
So if we sort of lose a lot of jobs, if we don't have anything to do, people will evolve.
We'll have plenty of things to do. We have to solve the environmental problems. We still have those 15 challenges. What are you going to do? Just because AI is doing the diagnostics for your body and making you healthy doesn't mean that you don't have other things to do. We have to make civilization worthwhile. It's one thing to make civilization work, which we're working on now. Next is to make it worthwhile. And this is where Buddhism comes in. Let's make it worthwhile. How do we evolve a spiritually advanced, conscious technology relationship for the whole planet? That's a lot of work to be done.
So a lot of community work.
A lot of community work.
As well as, enlightenment.
For example, the Western historians tell us that philosophy began with the leisurely priestly caste of Egypt. right? Small bunch of priests had free time, had guaranteed income from the pharaoh.
Yeah, that's right.
And they invented philosophy and a lot of mathematics, and all this came out of a small group of people, supposedly. Now, what happens if you have the whole human species free to be leisurely, priestly cast, so to speak? How much invention could come out of that? We have no idea. We've never had a civilization where the vast majority of the people were free to create their life rather than do somebody else's job. We've never had that before.
So with the emerging technologies, we will get abundance. We'll have cheaper education, cheaper energy, cheaper transportation, and cheaper housing, as well as clothing. What sort of jobs in the future that you think we
Make a
should
distinction. Some people make a distinction between jobs and work.
Jobs and work.
This is a linguistic thing that maybe gets lost, but the distinction is work is what I do, right? Like this is not my job here. I didn't hire it. I am doing my work. My work is to help people think about the future. So I'm doing my work. This is not my job. I didn't go somewhere to get hired. So a job is what your work that they get hired by somebody. But the work is what you bring to it. But if you bring to it your own assignment saying, I need to understand the history of X in order to do this. The only reason you have to write a proposal to be able to do that is to get money so you can eat, right? And prepare for your children and so forth. But if you have a basic income, plus whatever other activities you do, then you're free to say, I don't need to write a proposal. I can just start that research myself. I get up in the morning and just begin. Don't ask for permission, just start.
What would happen to the education then? You know, we have a primary, middle school, high school, colleges, and all these structures.
Education is a tough one to change. You got a lot of momentum there. But imagine another system is evolving within education now. And that is learning for mastery in a particular area. Like a lot of computer people will take an exam to say, I am now certified in this capability. Right? So you're mastered that thing. So imagine taking that concept and taking it all the way through school. So in the early age, a couple of years old, instead of saying the whole class moves from this grade to the next one, and then this one to the next one, well, but what happens if you get 80 in year one on something? That means 20% you don't know. And then next year you get, let's say, 80 also, but it's another 20 you don't know. As you go on, there's an awful lot that you're carrying with you that you don't know. Why not saying, I am mastered on this one and mastered on this one, completely different things, so I may be very good and accelerate on this area, and I just need more time on this one. So instead of treating everybody the same, everybody can be self-learning and then mastered so that you end up with a whole bunch of different kinds of masteries that's unique to you, and that you pick the learning experience from the entire world. Right now I'm going to learn in that school. Well, we all know that doesn't have all the knowledge. It could be there's a great online course that I could take over here.
Yeah, like a MOOC.
Like MOOCs, like all kinds of things. And a lot of teachers that
and micro colleges, they call it, and small.
Yeah. Don't know about that one myself. But the idea, though, is that we will be able to pick the best teachers from the world and the best curriculum materials and the best video materials and the best immersive environment materials accessing worldwide. And then we have to pull together. Now we can have a coach saying, you're a little bit weak on this. You really ought to do some of that. So you can still have coaches. Educators may be more coaches than teachers, so that then you're not bound by forcing everybody to go at lockstep together, because that's not real. People are not robots.
So, well, we covered quite a lot. What would happen to religion?
Napoleon took the crown out of the religious leader's hands and put it on his own head. Right? So they're saying, like, I am state power, I am moving beyond. Well, religion's still there. The world is engaged in an inter-religious dialogue now. The Dalai Lama is one of the leaders of this activity worldwide. So religion is now, for the first time, interact.
There comes the power of Buddhism.
To engage Korea into a conversation about its own future, what should be the long-term strategy, and a way to change it as you need to.